Hello, everybody. Welcome to Timcast Live. My name is Philibonte. I'll be hosting tonight on IRL. We've got a bunch of big stories for you. Yesterday, DNI Tulsi Gabbard has released a boatload of papers and information that spotlights Fauci knew about the origin of COVID. There's also some information that the CIA tried to quash complaints against Fauci for lying to Congress. Now, Rand Paul was really big on this, so I'm interested to see if there's anything that'll come out over the weekend or beginning of next week from Rand Paul, some kind of statement. But we'll talk about that. We've got information on, obviously, the Iran deal. It seems that the Iran deal is kind of in limbo now because J.D. Vance was heading to speak with, heading to Switzerland, I think, to speak with the Iranian representatives, and they got called off. There were strikes in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Obviously, it was Israel that was carrying out the strike. So it looks like it's kind of in limbo. We don't know if it's actually going to happen. So we'll talk about that. There is a measure in L.A. to allow non-citizens to vote in citywide elections. Now, this is coming to California more broadly, eventually, should the Democrats get their way. And honestly, if the Democrats could, they would make it nationwide. So we're going to get into that. There's also a bunch of hubbub from the San Francisco Giants Pride Night, right? Like they had to have the pride flag on their logo, and now the DOJ has a probe into it. We're also going to, if we have time, we'll talk about the problems that young people are facing because 1 in 3 adults under 35 are still living with their parents, and then Supergirl's kind of being a jerk on the media trail, and this worked so well for Brie Larson that she's like, I'm going to do that. So yeah, we're going to just jump right into it. Joining us tonight to talk about all of this, we have Noah Hall.
Yeah, Noah Wall, president and founder of State Leadership Initiative at Noah Wall on X.
And Jacob Wehmeyer.
Yeah, I'm the chief of staff for the State Leadership Initiative. You're just at Red States Lead. That's the State Leadership Initiative account.
Awesome. Ian's here.
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Just ready to rock and roll, Phil.
Not change the weather with his mind.
Well, that's a bold claim. That's like saying there's no God.
Bold claim. That's probably the most mundane thing that I could possibly
I'm more
say.
agnostic on the issue. I don't know if it is or isn't.
11:56 p.m. the other day, you were like, it is.
I felt the rain trickle.
Yeah.
And so that cloud was passing north, and you were right. There's a huge cloud, and you can watch the weather like it's like pulsing. It actually looks like it's rolling, but you only get a 2-dimensional look on the radar. But it looks like it's rolling towards. It was going north. I meditated and focused and then drew it towards us, so we got that rain yesterday.
Well, let's get into it.
No.
Oh, yeah, let's.
Carter's here, yeah. So, hi, Carter.
What up, dude?
We'll get into it.
Welcome, guys.
So, from Fox News, Gabbard spotlights Fauci COVID origin questions in final act as intelligence chief amid succession fight. So most people know that yesterday was DNI Gabbard's last day as the chief. She is leaving to go spend time with her husband, who's fighting cancer. So Fox News reports, just before leaving office amid a contentious battle over who will succeed her, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard used one of her final acts atop the U.S. intelligence community to spotlight Dr. Anthony Fauci's role in discussions surrounding the government's COVID-19 origins review. While much of the material is familiar, Gabbard's release underscores her effort to make questions surrounding Fauci, COVID origin, and federal support for virus research part of her closing legacy atop the intelligence community. As Gabbard fired her final broadside, Bill Pulte, who has received bipartisan criticism over his lack of intelligence expertise, is set to take the reins at the office of the Director of National Intelligence while Trump's permanent nominee remains stalled. Jay Clayton, an attorney and former SEC chairman who Trump nominated to permanently lead ODNI, has seen his confirmation process delayed after the president said he was holding up the nomination pressure Congress to pass a voter identification measure. Does this actually matter? Fauci's been pardoned, so there's nothing that can actually be done. Generally, at least out among our viewers, everyone kind of is like, well, duh. Right, they knew, according to like I said, according to our viewers, they believed that Fauci had a hand in it. All the evidence that come out seems to point to Fauci having some kind of involvement. Now, whether or not this was something that CIA was involved, we'll talk about a little bit. But what do you guys think? Does this actually matter?
I would say yes. So what she released were a lot of the emails between Fauci and the intelligence community. So we have new information we did not have about the level of coordination in that op. and very clearly, I mean, she demonstrated that that was an op. And what I would add to this too, yes, he was pardoned. This, I think, gives, there's a lot, the folks over at the Oversight Project, Mike Howell, and many others have been talking about, were these pardons legitimate? Was this an auto pen pardon? There's a lot of questions, I think, about the legitimacy of the pardon, and this may give us the ammunition that we need to be able to further that along.
Isn't there a statute of limitation on this stuff?
Some of it, but so like the statute of limitations, I think particularly applies to like the the depositions to Congress where he was where actually those emails show that he lied to Congress knowingly, and talked to the intelligence community about that. But what I would say is, I think
he's alleged to have admitted to the intelligence community that he lied to.
Yeah. So
okay.
One of, in Tulsi's overview of the document, she talks about how that was one of the items that she released were documents that, back and forth about that congressional testimony. So what I would say is, depending on, this evidence, if it's admissible, I think that this could give us kind of the ammunition to maybe try some of those, because we're not only alleging that his crimes were, lying to Congress. I think that there's a lot of other potential crimes there, may not have the same statute of limitations. This might give us what we need to be able to challenge the legitimacy of his pardon.
Yeah, and what's like more concerning, or not, maybe not more concerning, like, given the pardon with Fauci and everything, what was leaked in those documents, or not leaked, what was revealed in those documents was that all of these intelligence assets that were trying to go through the normal, legitimate, codified whistleblower process were prevented from doing so or pressured against doing so. In the video, she references how, like, people that wanted to come forth anonymously, which is, like, by federal statute what they have to do, they were, for whatever reason, like, they weren't allowed to do so. Like, they had to whistleblow under their name. And then the other aspect was, if they did come forward with, like, concerns over what Fauci was saying, they were told that this would directly impact their career. So there's all sorts of, I think, also opportunity to go after the intelligence community that actively pressured people from not doing this, and also seemingly violated certain federal statutes on, like, what the whistleblower process even is.
I'm going to steel man Fauci for a minute, who I'm not a big Fauci fan, but if I was the president and we were working on a secret bioweapons program, which, dear God, I hope everybody is, if the enemies are working on one, we should probably have one too. Wouldn't
it be better if we were working on cures?
What's cures and diseases and all the above? Yeah, weapons and cures and all this. And I have my scientists lying to the public about it on purpose because, that's at my command as the president. Either they lie or they get fired. And so they lie for me. Are they really to blame? Then are they the ones that get the book thrown at them when everything comes out? Or was it the guy instructing him to lie? I don't know. Or was he not even instructed to lie? Is this all a Fauci plan? I can't imagine that a bioweapons thing is a Fauci thing. It seems like it would go up to the military.
I mean, well, to your point, like, the buck does kind of stop with the president, right? But there's also, we were talking about how top secret programs work and compartmentalization. So the president may be aware broadly that something's going on for this particular issue, but the president might not know about the ins and outs. Not that the president can't, because like our guest was saying last night, or maybe 2 nights ago, when it comes to secret compartmentalized information, you might know about it or know that something's going on, but not really have all the details because it's not pertinent to your day-to-day job. So whether it should go all the way to the president, whether it be President Trump or President Obama or President Biden, it really depends on, how likely is it that it was a directive from the president, or whether it was just like, hey, Mr. President, we're working on biological stuff, and the president's like, okay, yeah, we need to do that, and kind of just goes on to the next topic.
I mean, from my perspective, the deep state used COVID to make sure Trump could not win his second term. Fauci, like, he pushed this entire agenda in a way to trap Trump into, like, so what I'm trying to say
is it your opinion that it was released intentionally?
No, I'm saying that it was used.
Okay.
I think that he they created a situation. One of the some of the emails that Tulsi talks about that they released were such that how what are we going to say the cause of this is? They talk about the fact that they lied about the actual origins of it. They made it so you couldn't discuss China as being the where all of this stuff originated from. So, I mean, like, they created a situation to box Trump into a corner, and they forced his response to be in a way that hurt him most politically. I think Trump has every cause in the world to go after Fauci. And I think he absolutely should. And I think that, I think they should be really looking at opportunities to undermine, the pardon. I really think that that's an aspect that we need to go after.
So say to push the legitimacy issue as far as they can. That wasn't a legitimate pardon because Biden used the auto pen. You don't know that Biden actually directed it. It could have been one of his subordinates or something.
Yeah, I think that it is not established that Biden, I think from the perspective of the people who've looked into this on our side, they have not, they are not convinced that Biden knew that everyone was getting pardoned who got pardoned. It was a staff-led decision. If that is the case and that can be shown, I think that there's a very strong case to make that those pardons are not legitimate. Could be our opportunity.
There has been reporting that a lot of the actual day-to-day operations were staff-led, that Biden wasn't really there. Biden wasn't, cognizant of all the decisions being made. And so then that does bring into question, like, what did Joe Biden actually know, about whether it be pardons or whether it be national security or foreign policy or what have you. You were going to say something?
Well, have there been examples over time of pardons getting, like, undone after the fact?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, my understanding is almost no. Like, I'm not going to say that it's never happened, but this is a new field of law, and it's new because this is the first instance we have where a president is signing pardons. Well, his signature is being used to sign pardons that he was not cognizant of. The law is very clear. President can pardon anyone for anything. Like, it's a pretty wide blanket, but if it's not him doing it, it's a different issue.
This kind of makes me wonder if that's actually a good precedent to set because for a fact, and this is something we talk about, Democrats are going to be going after the entire administration once they get back into power, right? Excuse me. Should the Democrats in 28 win the House, the Senate, and the White House, it's not going to be just okay, we're going to take over from here and we're going to fix things. There's going to be investigations. There's going to be attempts to put Donald Trump and a lot of the people that are in his administration in jail. They're going to go after conservative pundits. They're going to go after podcasters. It's going to be like COVID days, but on 10, because they're going to try to consolidate power. They're going to do all the things they talk about when it comes to expanding the court. They're going to do all they can to make D.C. and Puerto Rico a state. I mean, look, there are people that if they could do it, they would they would either expand the court or they'd dissolve the Senate, entirely, say that it's unnecessary. It's a vestige of the past. And look, there might be an argument for it because with the popular election of senators, their actual constitutional role has been completely dissolved. There is, if you've got popular elections of senators are supposed to represent the state legislatures, not they're not supposed to represent the people. You know what I mean? So it's possible that this becomes a real thing. So do you think that that's a good precedent to set?
I think that I'm not an attorney. There's a lot more smarter attorneys that are dealing with this than me. But what I would say is a narrow opinion that someone else can't sign, pardons on the president's behalf doesn't, ultimately affect the president's ability to sign pardons. Trump's just going to need to film himself signing every pardon that he signs going forward, which I think he basically
now
does.
You got like AI video, so like, how would you know that it was really him?
Yeah,
because you could use digital. There's like DocuSign.
Yeah.
So technically, you're not the one signing it, even though it's because you're using a computer to put the marks on the paper instead of your pencil, which I don't know how big of a difference. Then you could have an AI sign things for you at your command. And it's like, well, if you're having your pen do the signing for you at your command, like there's there's a line about, is it a tool that you're using to have it signed? But I think the argument, like you said earlier, is more about, was he aware that the signatures were going forward?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think that, you would need to be, the precedent that you want to avoid is a limit on pardon power as a result of this, pushing this issue. But if you are able to make it clear that the president has to be aware of the pardons that he's signing, I think that is, I think as long as they're careful on that front, I think you're okay if you use, the Fauci issue as a way to go after on the pardon front.
To the credit of should we do something or should we encourage something, to be the first to do it, and then Democrats are going to come back and do it again. It's we're already seeing the radicalism. So in the federal government, there's a lot of talk and not a lot of show yet because they don't have that power yet. But in blue states, you're seeing the absolute most insane thing. California, we'll get into. Virginia's probably the best example of this.
Yeah.
When the Virginia court ruled against them, what was their first reaction? We're going to mandate that every person over 50 has to retire from the court and appoint new judges. This is the first thing they want to do. What they actually want to do,
And over 50 too, that.
It was ridiculous.
That's a ridiculous.
Really specific age.
Yes, it was 54. It was something dumb like this. They just wanted to get rid of the entire court. And there was some that were giving pushback. But for the most part, when you look at blue states, they're just so radical that they are now California's the model, it gets exported to other states. And then this becomes the federal mandate for Democrats in the Fed. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do use, God forbid, 2828 goes bad, they use every single lever they have.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter anyway. So, I'm a bit more bullish on just do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's something we talked about a lot around here. Is it's kind of baked into the cake that when Democrats get back into power, that they're going to do this. That was a conversation that was brought up a lot when they were talking about getting rid of the filibuster. It's should we get rid of the filibuster? And it's well, if we do it, then what are the Democrats going to do? It's the Democrats are going to get rid of the filibuster the instant they need to. Absolutely, there's no question. Curtis Yarvin has a great quote. Republicans look at power like a wine snob looks at power, and Democrats look at power like an alcoholic looks at power. And it's a great quote because it really is demonstrative of the way the Democrats and Republicans act. The Republicans, the base wants all these things, and there's so many people that watch the show and that call in and stuff. They're oh, Donald Trump hasn't done this and Donald Trump hasn't done that. I'm turning my back on him, blah blah blah. And it's honestly, if you look at the things that Donald Trump actually has done, when you think of the power that the president actually has, he's been incredibly successful, right? Whether or not he's done all the things that you wanted him to do is not the question here. It's how much power does the president actually have? And he's done a lot of things through executive order. He closed the border, which is the biggest thing, in my opinion. And it looks like they're making moves to really push to get to deport more people and stuff. And I think he's doing it in a fairly smart way, because if you constantly had ICE raids like we had in Minnesota over the winter, you'd constantly have protests and you'd have all this pushback, and you would really change the opinion of the voter. People don't have a strong stomach. They don't want to see that kind of stuff. But if you can manage to do things that change the law, make it harder for people to stay here, stuff like that, go after business owners that actually employ illegals, which there's some that's happened. And I don't think it needs a lot. I think you only need to go after a few people, and business owners will be that's not going to happen to me. We'll get these guys out of here. I think that actually will be pretty functional. So Donald Trump has been pretty successful, but when the Republicans in Congress, or the Republicans that don't like Donald Trump, are presented with something like the SAVE Act, they're whoa, I don't know, that's kind of a big deal, and the states are supposed to be able to do their elections however they want. That's not what the Republican base wants. That's not what conservative Americans want. Whereas when you get the Democrats, they're just do whatever. They're I don't care. They'll literally create things out of whole cloth. They'll accuse people of things that are totally. Douglas Mackey comes to mind, right? They put him in jail over memes because, oh look, he said he made a joke. I mean, he put this meme up and he was trying to disenfranchise people and et cetera, et cetera. And they'll sit there and they'll say that with a straight face and they'll act like they take it seriously when really all they're trying to do is punish a guy for mocking Hillary Clinton and making jokes about Hillary Clinton.
The thing he did that stepped over the line legally was he put a phone number on the meme. He was if you want to vote for Hillary Clinton, call this number, which is technically illegal. You're misleading people, because they thought they were actually getting their vote through.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is nobody that saw that actually thought it was real. Everybody realized that it was just a meme. But that's why I said Democrats act like it's serious. They will look you straight in the face and say, no, this is real. This is actually serious. Look, this is what he did. And this has got to stop. And this is why he's got to go to jail. And we got to prevent this. Even though it was blatantly obvious to anyone that saw those memes that they weren't real.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that, because I'm sitting here looking up, like, has there ever been an instance of a presidential pardon being overturned? And I'm looking at these, like, no, there's never been a clear, but, like, we've seen instances of stuff that has never happened ever before done by the Democrats over the last 6 years. So kind
Republicans,
of the way
too, they bought 10% of Intel. I've never seen the government buy 10% of a private
The
company.
government literally dumped a boatload of money into Ford and to GM in 2008.
Did they buy it? They just bailed them out. They didn't get a percentage.
Same thing. They put money in. It's the same thing if you're purchasing stock, especially seeing as if the United States purchases stock of Intel and the stock goes up, the government actually makes money. They didn't take a controlling interest.
I know that's the argument for it, but it doesn't. It's the government buying private companies.
It's not. But they didn't buy the whole company. They bought stock. They bought an interest in it. They didn't buy. The government bought stocks. They didn't purchase the company or nationalize it.
I'm just looking up if they bought Fannie Mae in the 2008 bailout. I know they bailed them out. I just don't know if
they bought Fannie Mae. Now that's a government. The government. There is plenty of precedent of the government either taking control of companies or
you're right. They took over the Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
I think that's what backs and funds like FHA loans. It's all done through Fannie Mae, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to reiterate your point about how you argue the Democrat. I think you said who was it? Curtis Yarvin, that the Democrats will treat it like power, like an alcoholic treats alcohol, whereas the Republicans will treat it like a wine snob. Because I can see the Republicans like consolidating all these potential explosive power things, and then they're like, "Let's do it." And they're like, "No, that's a 75-year-old vintage. We're not going to touch it." Whereas the Democrats go in and they're like, "Drink it, drink." Take that, change that.
Really
So the Republicans are like buying stock in things. They're creating a technocracy behind the scenes. They're getting all their bottles aligned. And like, if an evil guy comes in, dear God, they have the Patriot Act and the NDAA.
But the Democrats have the Patriot Act and the NDAA too, if they're in the government.
And the concern is who would misuse it. I mean, you probably the alcoholic would tend towards misusing, your array of alcohol.
All you have to do to see kind of the extent that the Democrats will go last time or will go next time based on what they've done before is if you look through the Arctic Frost documents. It's one of the most incredible things. So all of these documents, the prosecutions against all of like the conservative organizations in D.C., hundreds of subpoenas. They were monitoring bank accounts. They had wiretaps. They had, confidential informants. And you can go read this confidential, informant email correspondence. They have the names blocked out so you don't know who it is, but you see all of it. Friend of mine he's CEO of the Conservative Partnership Institute. It's like Jim DeMint, Mark Meadows' organization. He is mentioned many times in Arctic Frost. They were investigating CPI. They never found anything, but the confidential informant documents are so crazy, accusing him of treason, trying to say that he's like recruiting a militia to overthrow the government. Like, this is Looney Tune stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, he does trainings on Senate procedure is like what his organization does. And they're like accusing him of this. The point being, you can look at what they've done before. They will twist and turn and use every single and lie overtly. Because, if you look through all of these, if you know the people involved, every single aspect of it is a lie. And it's sloppy. So like, it's very clear what they'll do next time. I think that our side just has to move forward. And I think, to his credit, that's exactly what President Trump's doing.
Feels like, like you were saying, someone was saying how radicalized the Democratic Party seems to have become, but it seems like the government in general has become like the internet. I know it's been a long time we've been boiling in it, so it's tough to feel the temperature, but like the whole system has become maybe not hyper radicalized, but intensely radicalized. The Fourth Amendment's gone. Like spying, these things are all spying on us right now, fervently, like constantly, and it's a technocratic, a coup essentially of our rights. I mean,
this is part of the reason why like the domestic focus matters so much, because people are only going to go more crazy the worse things are here. Like, I think Federal Reserve just put out a report that under Biden, like 30% of all increases of mortgage prices were because of illegal immigration. So we have essentially priced out all of the young Americans out of homes. Young Americans are the ones that are radicalized too. It's not the boomers. The boomers are chill.
Yep.
They have the 13-foot ceilings. They have their boats and their RVs. They're happy. But the young Americans are the ones going crazy because they are poor. They're on Klarna and Affirm. Like, they're affirming Walmart purchases. Like, people are in a much, much worse economic situation than their parents were, their grandparents were. And this is only them fueling even worse and more radical politics. Obviously, the internet, like mass communication, makes this worse. But if things don't improve domestically for young people, then you're going to continue seeing this sort of type of violence. I think the reason why we see it on the left so much more than the right is because the right, there's the broader culture of like personal responsibility. You need to go work, go get a job, try and be productive.
Yeah.
So then all the people on the right, they're like actually trying to do it. And then on the left, you have these people that go, they're overeducated, underemployed. They went, they got their $80,000 degree from God knows where and who knows what. They can't get a job, and then they freak out. And
when you go to college, you're taught nothing but Marxist power dynamics.
That's true.
You're taught entirely that, the reason that our society is so terrible now is because the billionaires. I think it was Asmongold posted this, and other people have actually made it in made the argument in a much more much less succinct manner. But Asmongold was saying, you're not oppressed by the top 2%. You're oppressed by the bottom 2%, right? Like, the people that are going to steal your car, the people that are going to smash your windows, the people that are going to act out, they're the people that have nothing to lose, right? The people that are billionaires, the people that are millionaires, the wealthy people in society, they're the people that possibly could give you a job, right? Like, you go and you fill out 100 applications or 200 applications. It's a pain in the ass, I understand. But that 201st application where you get a job, the guy that owns the business, he's not a vagrant. Right? He's not a guy that's out rioting and throwing Molotov cocktails at Teslas because he's mad at Elon Musk. He's not a guy that's going to commit a strong arm robbery. He's not a guy that's gonna be in the way I made the point was like, Elon Musk isn't going to be in line in front of me at Walmart losing his mind because he can't put Zins on an EBT card, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that affects your day-to-day life, right? For your average person. As much as they want to blame the rich, right? Blame the people that have money, blame Elon Musk for being a trillionaire, blame Jeff Bezos, etc. All of those people have materially improved most Americans' lives. Everybody loves the fact that you can get stuff delivered by drone from Amazon in a lot of places, right? Like, you can get if you live in most suburbs of big cities, you can get same-day delivery from Amazon. The idea, like, that was completely, I'm not that old, but I'm an old guy. And when I was a kid, the idea of getting same-day delivery, everything that I ordered when I was a kid, 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. It'll be there in 6 to 8 weeks. Now, it's like, if it's not there in 2 days, you're like, oh, screw this, And so it's true that, like, the wealthy people in the world actually don't make your lives worse.
Well,
the lowest common denominator that are most likely to make your life worse. They're the people that, if you get into a car accident, they don't have insurance. They're the people that are going and filling up the emergency rooms because they don't have health insurance. Now, maybe it's not their fault, right? Maybe it's not they fell in hard times and stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that you interact with people that are, when you're interacting on a day-to-day basis, you're more likely to have someone in the bottom 2, 3, 4% of the country that materially impacts your life than you are to bump into some rich guy that makes your life worse.
What I disagree in that I think it's both extremes are oppressing what's happening to most people. That the poor
what did
people,
Elon Musk do to you?
Well, it's more about the people that run the banks that are commanding compound interest, because our debt, we borrow money from the Federal Reserve, our government does, and then we have to pay it back with interest that doesn't exist. So we're constantly in this Ponzi scheme of stress, of falling behind the economic order, and we're constantly being baited and kind of being controlled by the banking establishment.
You don't have to go into debt. I mean, you probably have to go into debt to get a house, but if you don't get a house, you don't have to use credit cards. You don't have to go into debt to these bankers that you're worried about.
The government to create money literally goes into debt from the Federal Reserve. They take a promissory note from the Federal Reserve in order to create a dollar, promising that they're going to pay the reserve back with interest.
Is it your argument that a gold standard or actual physical precious metal monetary system would be better?
Well,
and if so, why?
It would be less corrupted in this way. It would probably have problems of its own because then there'd be a limited supply and some people would literally have zero. Like at this, at least they can print it out and give you your $200 a week, universal basic income and try and slow down the explosive.
So then this is just the least bad system?
Well, what I would say to your point, because, you can look at what's happened since we went off the gold standard. What has happened is everything in our economy has become financialized to an extent that has never existed before in history. So, there's a lot of speculation that the reason that all of this financialization of the economy, again, the top industry in America is finance. Like, we used to be manufacturing economy. We used to have, now it's finance and real estate. And part of the reason, one of the big drivers of that was the financialization of the economy after we went off, the gold, our smartest people in America all go into finance. That's not necessarily a natural thing. That is a cause and consequence of us just making a decision to move to fiat currency. So there's probably, I'm not saying that we need to go back to a gold standard. I think there's probably other financial solutions at this point. But the fact that our economy is so financialized is a decision that policymakers made, is not necessarily a natural order of things.
This is where I start to align or at least understand the communist mentality of like seizing property from the wealthy, because there's to the right, the extreme right is corporatocracy, where the corporations own all the property and you're basically, if you say the wrong words, they'll take away your house, they'll take away. Then to the far left is nobody owns any property. We all own it together collectively, which how that fails into vanguardism, small groups of people. So if BlackRock buys up 80% of the houses, of course the people have a right to overthrow that system and take their housing, take their land back. Like, good God, it's a human right.
But I mean, we were just talking about how the housing market is actually the driver of the prices is illegal immigrants. Mm-hmm. The reason that the prices have gone up so much is because of how many illegal immigrants are in the U.S.
Well, it's not just that. It's also, I think it might have been the Realtors Association or it was a National Home Builders Association. They've been doing these studies on the impact of regulation on building homes. And now, I think the last one they did that I saw was like 2021, $100,000 in 2021 of the price of a new build home was only for regulatory compliance. So we've made it super, super difficult to build a house. We've made it super expensive, regulation speaking. And then we imported like 20 million people. And then we gave them free FHA loans with 0% down payments at like super low COVID rates. So we've totally destroyed the housing market by essentially just giving it to like a bunch of people that just walked up the southern border.
I mean, government is the problem in most cases. In what we're talking about, you mentioned BlackRock. Why is BlackRock such a behemoth? Because every retirement system in America places a massive percentage of those retirement funds into BlackRock. It is a government, fueled monopoly. And, there's been federal courts now that have called BlackRock a monopolistic actor. And, so I mean, I think that, what you're saying, I'm very sympathetic to the view that we have all of these problems with these monopolistic actors. Every single monopoly in history has been a creation of government intervention. So you can go to BlackRock and look where, they've got 10 trillion in assets. Where do they get those 10 trillion in assets? It's pension funds. So both Republican and Democrat states have something like, it's $2 or $3 trillion invested in BlackRock. So foreign governments too, because it's a global, monopoly. But the point being, there are solutions to this, and the solution in this particular, I'm not like a libertarian, but in the solution in this case is, whether it's regulation or artificial, migration that is facilitated and encouraged by government. We've got to solve these problems. And in most of the cases, the root causes of all of this have been government interventions into the marketplace that have absolutely wrecked, life for the average American.
Well, what then, like a solution, would that be just people just decide we're just going to build houses here, and then the government will try and stop them and be like, what are you doing to me?
Well,
There's regulation. That's the way regulation works. It'll be like, I want to build a house, and the government says, well, you have to have these permits, and then to get the permits, you have to get, you have to have inspections, or you have to do surveys, you have to do studies on the impact that it's going to have on the environment, you have to do all sorts of things, and that's all regulation.
Yeah, even like left-wing projects. So like I think the biggest one was under Biden, might have been like Build Back Better. It was like a huge infrastructure project. I think it was Ezra Klein talked about this, and he sort of went viral, where he went over all of these projects that were supposed to be funded by the federal government through this like $1 trillion spending act. Turns out almost none of these have been built. And the reason why is because this one was for the like 5G across all of America. So they wanted every single square inch of America to have internet connection. And for you to put down like a cell tower for internet connection anywhere in America, you had to go through a 14-step process of like applications and reviews with the government. And it turns out none of this got built. And this is sort of the process for just about everything. Like one of my favorite examples is the wildfires. So when we see these massive wildfires happen across the country, you'd think, well, why didn't we like do a prescribed burn and do the normal thing that we do for forest mitigation, for fire management? And the reason why is because to pass NEPA clearance, it takes 7 years. The average is 7 years. So a forest management guy goes into a forest, sees a fuel load. There's all sorts of stuff on the ground. There's like pine cones and all sorts of crap. And he's like, okay, we need to do a burn because this is going to build up. It's going to tank the entire forest. So he goes and he writes a thing, sends it to the federal government, and it takes 7 years for them to get back and eventually say, okay, fine, you can burn. And by that point, the fire's already happened. It's burned down the Palisades.
Just one lightning striking along.
Why does it take so long?
Because that's what the government does.
Yeah. NEPA, what's NEPA?
NEPA is a National Environmental Protection Act.
Yeah.
This is passed under
Nixon. Yeah, 1970.
Who's a patriot?
No, he was patriot, but Congress at the time, super Democrat, they went through and passed. And so you can go through pretty much every federal project has NEPA review problems. It makes these things, there's other reasons corruption-wise why the bridge in Baltimore hasn't been rebuilt in 5 years, haven't even really broken ground on it yet. Its NEPA reviews are a huge portion of it. So any project that takes federal money at all is part of NEPA. Trump is in process. I think he's gotten part of that dialed back. But there's so much more he's got to do. Yeah, he's working on it.
The government, like every regulation that the government has, it's also one small chunk of whatever the funding money is that gets taken away. So if you get $1 trillion to do a big thing, right? Part of the reason why a lot of projects don't get done is because every organization that gets some kind of say in it gets their cut of the money, so that way they can do the paperwork that's necessary. So they can say, well, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's not like these organizations, they don't have people that are there volunteering. They all go ahead and they get their cut of the money that's being spent. That's part of the reason why California has never gotten their high-speed rail built. I think they've made 150 feet of it or something like that, and they've spent like 58 or whatever billion dollars, or maybe it's 85. But they spent billions and billions and billions of dollars trying to make high-speed rail, and they've built something like 150 or 200 feet of it because all of the funding that it goes to actually build the thing gets eaten up by the EPA or by all of the regulation stuff.
So I imagine regulations are in place to prevent corruption so that you don't...
No. Not when it comes to environmental stuff. It's not to prevent corruption. It's to prevent...
Environmental corruption, all forms of corruption. Like you don't want to build a house that then pours oil into the river, which would corrupt the environment.
Okay, so I think you're changing the meaning of corruption in this context.
Aspects of environmental corruption, political corruption, economic corruption, physical corruption.
They're different kinds of corruption, and
so they're trying to prevent destruction of different types. But then what's happening is it is a corrupted system because it is taking so long to try and prevent the errors. It has become an error, is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the last big, massive patriotic American infrastructure project you can think of that's happened in the last 30 years. And you really can't. You think of Hoover Dam, Golden Gate Bridge, the interstate highways, all of these massive projects were pre the 1970s. And like Thiel wrote about this, why everything sort of stopped in the 70s. Big reason why is because our environmental litigation has made this almost impossible. And the other secondary consequence of all of these laws is that it opened up for a proliferation of like NGO groups to come in and endlessly sue every single project to prevent anything from getting done. This is the case for literally everything.
This was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I don't know if you guys were following it. 2012, Obama was going to sign us onto it, and there's this clause in it called the Investor-State Dispute Settlement Clause, where an investor is like a Malaysian oil company. It's like this globalization Trans-Pacific Partnership. So if a Malaysian company, the investor, had a dispute with a state, say the United States, for they call it discrimination. You're not buying our oil, so the investor could then sue the state. The corporation could sue America, and then the taxpayers would have had to pay them back. Would have to pay the corporation with tax money, and that's why I voted for Trump. That's why I was going to vote for Bernie Sanders. He spoke against it, and why inevitably I vote for Trump. Day 3, he got in 2016. He shot down that. I don't know why I brought up that particular policy.
I do, because you wanted to go to foreign policy, and we're going to jump to this story from the BBC. U.S.-Iran talks postponed as Israel launches deadly strike in Lebanon. A new round of direct talks between the U.S. and Iran have been postponed after Vice President J.D. Vance delayed a planned trip to Switzerland. The White House announced late on Thursday that Vance would not be traveling to the talks, and the logistics had not been simple or predictable. It comes a day after the U.S. dropped its naval blockade of Iran and after the two countries signed a deal aimed at ending the conflict. While the deal also said fighting should end in Lebanon, the country's health ministry reported Israeli strikes had killed at least 47 people overnight and into Friday. Israel's military said it had targeted the Iran-backed group Hezbollah and that 4 of its own soldiers had been killed. Hours before the White House issued its statement, Hezbollah-linked Lebanese media reported that the talks had been suspended due to ongoing Israeli strikes. Is Israel trying to derail the peace process?
I think Israel has a strong national interest, and I think that their interest in this case is not the same as our interest. I think that President Trump had, I think he went into this war. I think that he thought that there was going to be the possibility of a quick, of a quick resolution to it. That didn't happen, and I think he spent the last 2 months trying to find an exit ramp. I think he found what he thought was acceptable, took the best deal that he could get to be able to avoid, a global cataclysmic economic collapse. And I think Israel has just, in this particular case, a different set of priorities. And that's okay. It's okay that foreign countries have different priorities than us. My problem, and who I blame for all of this, are the American neocons who are obsessed with Iran. They've been obsessed with Iran for decades. This has been on their list to do, and they are just hell-bent on keeping us in this war. So I don't blame Israel. I blame the neocons.
What do you got?
Oh man, I think it's so unacceptable. It just sucks. I mean, there's already the concern of the global oil reserves going out, and there's obviously a case to be made that the war for us is the positioning with Venezuela and Cuba, and that we're going to become the global oil exporter. So it's good for the American economy and us geopolitically.
It's less bad for the U.S. than anyone else.
Yeah,
right?
And I think markedly it's obviously less bad because our biggest concern is oh no, our gas went up by a few dollars for a few months. That's sort of the biggest consequence for us for the most part. But the notion to trying to make sure you don't find peace is really unfortunate. I mean, it sucks.
It seems like this is what the Likud party has wanted since they wanted a two-party solution in the early 2000s, and then they were basically no, we don't want a two-party solution. We want to make sure that we can conquer all the territory. So put a bunch of, just seed the area with problems so that we have something to destroy, and then we can use that as an excuse to take it over. And if I was
talking about the Greater Israel Project,
I'm not sure. Maybe I don't know.
Because I understand what you're laying out, but I think the reason I don't agree with it is because Israel hasn't significantly expanded its borders, right? Since the 7-day war. They gave the Sinai back to Egypt. They haven't. They moved. I think they moved into Lebanon a little bit, but that's partially in the Golan Heights. But that's partially strategic, right? The Golan Heights basically is a raised area over Tel Aviv. Is it?
No, it's Haifa in the north.
Yeah, and so it's really like they want the Golan Heights so that way they're not, they don't have raised positions to shoot down at an Israeli city. But they haven't really done, like, there's a lot of people that talk about the Greater Israel Project, and I don't see Israel, making moves to expand their territory.
The Gazan, I mean, the slaughter of those people and the corralling and it's pretty. It seems like that's the plan. I don't know.
But the Gaza's already kind of part of Israel, and like they left Gaza in like 2005, and they kept them corralled. But like
Gaza's a complicated situation because Egypt does not want the Palestinians.
Neither does Jordan.
And neither does Jordan, and neither does Israel. So they've sort of been stuck, and the reason why is because the Palestinians have had all these sort of like various revolutionary movements in like the past 40 years that like toppled certain princes. I think there was an assassination attempt. There's a lot of really bad blood, so none of them really want any of them. So they've kind of all just said, no, you stay here. And then obviously October 7th happened, so then the reaction to that. I think the biggest probably expansion that's always been very controversial is the West Bank situation with like all of the suburb developments where they just like move Israelis in. But I mean, the Greater Israel thing is more of like the American sort of early 2000s projects in the Middle East where like we took out Gaddafi and Saddam, and then now like Syria and like Assad's out like in hiding or whatever. And there was this idea that after we sort of topple these nations, like Israel will expand. That's like sort of the theory. I think there's other explanations that are a lot more plausible and reasonable. When it comes to Iran, like there's obviously an existential issue of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Israel has supposedly a nuclear weapon. So like if they get
neither confirm, they can neither confirm nor deny. But we can confirm if you come after us and we have an existential threat, we will use a nuclear weapon.
So like there's a very valid argument, and the war has been great for Bibi because like I think his approval ratings went up. Like he sort of likes this for him, like politically, and like peace is probably, it maybe looks bad or worse politically for him. But even then, like if there's a peaceful solution, for the sake of everybody, it's preferable that a peaceful solution is met rather than like total annihilation, like between the two countries.
What was Netanyahu? He was like being investigated by their judiciary right before October 7th, and then
still is. I mean, so like Israel has this massive problem with their judicial system that a lot of countries around the world have, where the judiciary is incredibly far left. And they've been investigating him. My understanding is he still has to go into like testimony judicial process hearings like 2 days a week, like even now. So like he is like, absolutely swamped by the Israeli judicial system. That has been a massive problem for a very long time. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a legitimate claim that, that judicial system has been very politicized against him.
Now, before we get into like the ins and outs of politics inside Israel, I want to point to this piece here from Newsweek. Trump blasted a newspaper owned by top donor. You betrayed us, and this goes to the question of how Bibi is kind of looks at the war and wants to see it going on. A newspaper owned by billionaire Republican mega donor has published a blistering opinion piece accusing President Donald Trump of betraying Israel over his deal with Iran to end the war. The critical op-ed was published by Israel Hayom, the Israeli newspaper owned by Miriam Adelson, one of Trump's biggest financial backers and one of the most influential pro-Israel donors in Republican politics. Adelson, a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen with an estimated fortune of tens of billions of dollars, has been a major force in shaping conservative support for Israel and has had close ties to Trump for years. In the column, Israel Hayom's journalist Danny Zakin praised Trump's past support for Israel, but said the president has made a colossal mistake by signing what he calls a surrender agreement with Tehran. In a piece headlined, "You could have been the greatest president of all, but you failed." Zakin wrote that Trump had missed an opportunity to be remembered among America's greatest presidents and warned the deal could damage U.S. interest in Israel's security. I think that's crap, personally. The idea that doing something that benefits Israel primarily, I have my own thoughts about what the situation in Iran is. I wrote a piece on my Patreon on the day the strikes initiated. I think that it's mostly about China, or at least a good portion about China. But this guy's take that an American president that does something that the Israeli hawks makes him the most memorable or the greatest American president. That's crap. That's garbage. Israel is its own country and they have their own interests, but the United States is not a client state of Israel. I don't care what anyone says. Like, Israel's influential, sure. You've got AIPAC and you've got all this you've got a lot of people that are Jewish in the administration. They have a lot of influence, but the U.S. still calls the shots. So this to me just smells of a tantrum that the United States isn't carrying out strikes when Israel wants them to.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem here is, so first of all, Trump is clearly his own man. He has made decisions that have upset every possible interest.
Yeah.
So the idea that he's doing something on behalf of just one group, I think, is nonsense. So my biggest problem with all of, is nothing like, I don't know all that much about Miriam Adelson herself, other than she gives a lot of money. But the idea to me, and the biggest problem that I have is, the foreign policy establishment, essentially neocons and people sort of associated, they have a permanent vested interest in us toppling Iran. It is part of a project that they have deemed important for decades. They've been wanting every president to do this. These are domestic actors. These are people who, these are the folks who got us into the Iraq War, Afghanistan, and kept us there for decades. And the point that I think that, which is where I give so much credit to Trump, he is not interested in that. He may agree, tactical, we need to, stop Iran, whatever. The folks who are pushing Trump, that are, having temper tantrums on Twitter about Trump signing this deal, when you push them, they will not be happy with anything that doesn't keep us in Iran for the next 20 years. There's no off-ramp that they will be acceptable with, that they will find, in any way tolerable, other than us being there in a ground invasion and staying there for the next 20 years. They just won't.
Do you think that they actually, the people in question, the neocons in question, do you think that they had a sense that that was going to be the situation? And the reason I ask this argument is because if you look at the buildup, it was clear that there were going to be strikes.
Yeah.
But leading up to the war, and another reason why I was thinking about this is because there were so many people on the right, libertarians, anti-war people, that are just like, we're going to have boots on the ground forever, et cetera, et cetera. They were so afraid that the neocons were going to get what they wanted. And you look at the situation, you're like, this looks nothing like the buildup to going into Iraq.
Right.
They were not moving troops in. They were moving in air assets. It looked like there was going to be big strikes. But if you looked at what was actually happening, look, I've said this before, no ground infantry goes in unless there is a trailer with a Burger King attached to it right behind them. And that just didn't happen.
Right.
You didn't see that kind of stuff. You didn't see the buildup of ground forces. You didn't see the logistics buildup. And they were swearing up and down, oh, you wait, it's going to happen. You wait, it's going to happen. You wait, oh, it'll happen in a couple of weeks. It'll happen, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I didn't see it. And it looks like I was right. Like, we're trying to get out of it.
Right.
There's not going to be a ground war. Did the people that were the neocons, did they think that they could push for that kind of military?
And the reason that I think that, so I know a lot of these folks in DC, friends with a lot of them. They're actually, great patriots. They love America. I just don't happen to want us to be in forever wars. They may have a different opinion. The reason that I'm very confident that they thought that they would eventually get Trump into a ground war is because prior to Trump striking, they were the folks claiming the Iranians will rise up. The Iranians will rise up. We can do these strikes. We can be done real quick. Their goal was simply, and you saw this after the 13-day war or whatever last year, the minute the strikes started, their goalposts immediately shift. Their goal, like on a dime, the goal wasn't, okay, we're going to take out their nuclear capacity or we're going to take out their Air Force or their Navy. Immediately, their standard shifted to, we need a different regime in Iran. And like, it's like clockwork. They changed, the goalposts immediately because their strategy was, let's just get started and then we'll deal with it from there. Again, I don't even think this is not me blaming the Israelis. This is the foreign policy establishment in Washington, D.C. that has, it's the same folks in the Ukraine and wanting us to, keep getting involved there. It's just part of their nature. They like these, conflicts and they like them to continue. There's a lot of different reasons for it. But the bottom line was, the reason I'm so confident in the fact that they thought they could snare Trump into something long-term, into something that included ground forces, was because they immediately shifted the goalposts. And that's when you started to see like, okay, well, let's go into Carg Island. Let's just take like one island, it's just real small. We can just take that. Their goal is to get ground forces there. And Trump, to his, and this is what I love about him, he completely resisted that. And because he saw, once you get forces in there, maybe you lose some people, you got to go, and, Trump's going to defend the American military. If we have losses, he's going to make sure that we are there to defend them, to back them up. So their strategy, I think, was to get us in over time rather than, but right now their temper tantrum about Trump signing this deal is they want to make sure that this keeps going.
Yeah, I mean, even the framing of this article, it's like, he would have been the greatest president of all. He would have been remembered. It's like, he's going to be remembered for his domestic policy. Yeah. He's going to be remembered because of like what he does for the people here, for people who like can't afford houses right now, who can't afford cars or whatever.
There hasn't been a president remembered positively for a military action since World War II.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, like he's going to be like, even we just saw there's this like new truck company. It was like Rio. They announced like a under $25,000 gas truck. 600-mile tank, all-wheel drive, manual automatic available. Like, it's like, that is a direct response to the repealing of CAFE regulations. And CAFE regulations, which totally destroyed the truck and even like the greater automobile market in the country. Like, if he could get a new car available to young people, which is like what most boomers got to experience. If he could get that available to young people, that's what he's going to be remembered for. He's going to be remembered for that. He's not going to be remembered for some war. He's going to be remembered for making housing affordable, for mass deportations, for making things cheaper, making the way of life in this country better. That's what he's going to be remembered for, not for, a 3-month-long campaign in Iran, and especially not for if it goes even worse.
Yeah.
I'd love to see an industrial revolution on the domestic soil. I push graphene like it's my job.
I was just at Reindustrialize earlier this week out in Detroit. It is incredible what is happening. And Millar Atomics, just like...
They just hit criticality.
They just hit criticality yesterday.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
They're
building like portable nuclear reactors.
That work.
Criticality. What's criticality?
Critical means that it reaches the point of the reaction.
Yeah.
They're fusion or fission?
Fission. They haven't figured
fission
out.
Reactor.
Yeah, these are like size of this room.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Put them on a truck.
Like they're the nuclear future we could have had if it wasn't for the environmentalists in the 60s.
Exactly.
We're going to have that now.
Yeah.
Like there is amazing things happening on the reindustrialization. Trump will be remembered for that. Like, he's making this possible. We haven't been able to build in this country since the 60s.
Yeah. These nuclear reactors are likely going to be the key to powering the data centers
and everything else
that everybody's concerned about.
And, area denial lasers, things that can knock drones out of the sky, too. You'll be able to move them around.
Well, I mean,
blast.
They're already on, aircraft carriers which have nuclear power put on them.
So like terrestrial, like land-based, or even sky. I mean, you could probably fly those reactors in sky machines, airplanes and satellites.
Oh, we could get the airships back.
Yeah, airships as well.
Nuclear airships. I post about this on our account all the time.
Airships?
Nuclear airships. There's a dream. It was Atoms for Peace. This is under, I think, Eisenhower, and they had all this propaganda for we had the Ford Nucleon. This is a concept car for a nuclear-powered car. We had the nuclear airships. There was this ideal, this future of the American nuclear future that was robbed from us by scared boomers.
It's uranium. Uranium's pretty dirty, but if you have thorium, it's
the
clean.
thorium salt reactors.
They just don't melt down.
This is a little bit off, well, not off topic, but it's a little bit of tangent. There's one thing that drives me nuts about the way that people talk about nuclear waste. and I don't know for sure, but I think that it has something to do with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? The goo, right? Everybody thinks of nuclear waste as this sludge that's hard to contain, blah, blah, blah. For people that don't know, nuclear waste is metal rods, and they put them, they encase them in concrete and then encase them in a steel tube, right? Like they've transported nuclear waste all across the country on the highways. They've had accidents, car accidents, where the tubes have gotten knocked off and stuff. There's never been a significant nuclear spill of nuclear waste and that's another thing. They say spill, like a metal rod can spill. It's this implication of an oozing liquid that you can't contain and it's hard to clean up. They're literally metal rods. It's like big pieces. They're not made of steel, but it's like these big pieces of steel that they throw in, that they encase in concrete. And when I say encase, I don't mean they put them in a box. They literally just fill up a container full of concrete. So it's concrete with metal tubes in it, like rebar.
Corium? Then they bury them in the ground.
Yeah.
And like, this is a massive country.
Yeah.
Like, we have plenty of space. So like, yeah, no, I mean, and this is why, I want to keep going. Like, Trump is going to be remembered for this amazing, all of the amazing things he's doing, reindustrialize everything on this front. It can't happen if we keep, bombing the rest of the world. We've got to save this country.
The nuclear, it can all be reused, that nuclear waste. They call it waste right now because they haven't really figured out what to do with it, but they have actually. I interviewed Yezhedkel Moskowitz, great interview. He has a company that is, he's like, dude, there's 98% of our nuclear waste can be reconverted back into fuel. The whole system's recyclable. It's just a matter of putting the tech in place.
We have just made it impossible to build nuclear anything. And there's so much future of this. I mean, the guys at Villar, like, these things are safe. These things are, they are like, the more we do it, the more we're going to have experience doing it. We can reuse the waste. We can make sure that these, we can have a future where power is just, it's not, we're not going to be free, but it's going to be just
almost free.
Almost free.
That was the argument. That was the promise in the nuclear age. It was like free power. They're going to be able to generate so much power that you're not going to have an electric bill anymore. It's going to go away. And there is a new argument being made about AI and data centers. If you have a data center, they're using so much power at these data centers that the town down the street becomes the entire power need of the town down the street becomes a rounding error. So it's good it would be good business and good community outreach for the data center to say, you know what, we'll power your town for free. Nobody has an electric bill anymore because really we're spending, whatever, $100 million a month or whatever it is, $100 million a month paying for power for this place. What's another $10 million to cover the power for the town down the street? That is something that is actually a possibility in the future.
They call it nuclear reprocessing. That's but okay. So my concern is, it seems like domestically we are on track technically to rebuild phenomenally. Obviously, chaos and fighting and all that is always a threat. But geopolitically, how do we? What this like is? I don't know if you guys want to go back to it, but the Israeli-Iranian thing. I don't even think it's an American problem. Like, what do you do? Because if we lose the Suez Canal,
handle it by not handling it.
But if we don't do anything,
not our problem.
Suez Canal is our problem.
Suez Canal is not near Iran.
It is. It's right there.
Strait of Hormuz, you're thinking.
No, I'm thinking of the Suez Canal. We need trade from the Mediterranean to the Pacific.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So that's the whole point. I think it's why they set up Israel where they set it up 100 years ago, is to protect that area of the world so that we can control global trade routes. So that's kind of why we're tied in. It's like we need to maintain the Suez and all those little gulfs and things. That's why you have Kuwait. Kuwait was our oil bridge out into the Indian Ocean, basically. I mean, how do you, without like the only way out is through? I don't know, like blowing our way through this, like exploding 100 million people doesn't seem like the right answer. I just don't know how to stop them, the Israelis. Like my deep concern is that the Israelis are completely cut off geopolitically, diplomatically, and then they're like, we have no choice but to nuke everyone now. See, you pushed us to this. We're like, bro, I can't hold your hand. If you're going to threaten suicide over and over, like at some point I'm going to let you do it. I don't know what to do. Like I can't force you to be good.
Yeah. So my thing with Israel, I think that they, I have absolutely no problem with a strong alliance with them. I have absolutely no problem with them defending themselves. I think it's their duty to do that as a country. We need to make very clear that we're not the world's policemen. We cannot be going to do these wars anymore.
When you say world's policemen, there's one I do want to get your opinion on this. I think the United States as the guarantor of the sea lanes is a good thing. And I don't think that counts as world police. Some people would say, oh, the U.S. with all the big Navy that we have and spending all this money on the Navy and et cetera, we don't need that kind of stuff. I think the U.S. has been a net positive for global trade because the U.S. guarantees international trade via the seas. Is that when you say world police, are you talking about?
I think that Trump is rebuilding the Navy, something that's really, so we've got something like 10, 12 aircraft carriers groups. During World War II, we built 150 aircraft carriers in 4 years. We can barely build ships now. To me, we should be, I think that the future of America guaranteeing world trade, and I have no problem with that. I don't consider that world police. I consider going in, ground invasion, taking out, I think that a future, I think the stuff that the Anduril guys, I don't want drones flying over my house, police drones. I want drone ships policing the seas, preventing piracy, we need dominance in, we need naval dominance with future technology that we have companies currently building. The future where we do that isn't going to be secured by, current generation ships. We're seeing the limits of that right now where, we are trying to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, or were, before we signed the deal, they were just flying $500 drones into the Strait. We need a future technology to be able to help us do that. But to me, that's more of we need to be focusing on, making sure that the various sea lanes are open, making sure that, the Panama Canal is controlled by Americans and not China. All of this that's totally possible without invading a single country.
You say you don't want drones flying over your house, and I also identify, but what if they're so high up you don't see them?
I care less the less I see them.
Even if they're equally as lethal?
Well, because satellites are already, going around the planet all the time. And I mean, you may not, I'm not sure exactly the resolution quality you can get with satellites, but I'm fairly confident they can, I know that just the stuff that I see on Google Earth is fairly impressive. So whether it be a drone or a satellite, the concept is essentially the same, right?
Oh, what I'll say about drones and what I'll say about that, I think that a future of the Second Amendment, for instance, involves Americans owning their own drone swarms. We actually work at this at our organization. We're trying, we want to make sure that states enshrine the right of law of Americans to be able to use drones for self-defense. That's actually a real thing.
I'm sold.
You should Americans should absolutely have drone swarms defending their home. I want to make sure, you mentioned the Fourth Amendment earlier. I absolutely agree. We need to have, Americans need to be able to have, implement high-level encryption. That's the type of thing that there are government actors right now trying to make illegal for Americans to have high-level encryption technology. So there's a lot of things we need to do to get back to on the civil liberties front. I'm a very strong believer. I think America has this long tradition of people who care about privacy for its own sake. You're not trying to hide anything. It's just your right to think and behave and be private is something we do need to get back to. And that's really a cultural fight. We need people to care about that. I think a lot of people just assume they're being spied on, so they don't care.
We were just talking about this yesterday. This is actually more a generational fight than anything, because Gen Z, they don't conceptualize privacy the same way that I do. I'm a Gen X. I'm 51. Yeah. When I think of privacy, I think of nobody's watching, nobody's listening, and I can do whatever I want with no one knowing. They don't have the same concept of it. in a day when you tap approve on a new app and you're giving them access to your camera and to your microphone, and they can literally listen to whatever's going on, and it's likely that the phone will could possibly send out an ultrasonic tone that you can't hear that will map your room, and map the way the interior of your house is. That's become just, something that people that are younger just expect. And it's, I think that the argument about, I agree with you. I like the idea. If you want privacy, you should be able to have it. But I think people have given up privacy, and given it up for the convenience and the benefits that modern technology. I mean, everyone knows that, not everyone knows, but for people that don't know, your Wi-Fi router itself can map the interior of your home now. They have algorithms that can measure the reflection of Wi-Fi signals inside of a room and can literally map out the inside of your room. It's like the Dark Knight. It's like the technology that Batman, that Lawrence Fox had to destroy at the end of Batman because it was too much power for one man to have. And turns out, well, guess what? Now everybody has it in their home. And all it took was the right algorithm to read it.
Yeah, I mean there's always like the polling between privacy and convenience, like you said. Like on my phone, I'm Gen Z. I was born in 2000. I remember a time when I had a flip phone when I was like 12, 13 years old. And back then, like we had either pictures that were physical or I had like a few pictures on my phone. And then now, like I would say probably 80% of the pictures on my phone are in Apple servers.
Yeah.
Like they're all just stored there. And, I was looking into like, well, what's the cost of having your own little data center, like your own data server in your own home, and the amount of work you have to do to go through all these programs that can sync then to your phone so you can have your own little personal client that runs 24/7 in your home. It's a lot of work. Like it's a little bit easier than you might think, but it's still a lot of work. And for most of us, like, yeah, we were just born into a world of a mass convenience at the expense of our privacy. And implicitly, most people, I guess the market has determined that people are willing to give up their privacy. Like I know there are times like, I remember I was talking to my fiance about going to do a vacation like Idaho. And the next thing you know, the next day on Instagram, I'm getting Airbnb ads for the town that I was talking about in Idaho. And I'm like, this just like, what am I going to do? Get rid of my phone? I need my phone for work. Like, I can't do that.
I think it has to be a cultural issue. The good analog on, to the privacy in my mind is the Second Amendment. Like the idea that you're going to take personal ownership of your security is a cultural thing. So we have the legal right in the United States to defend ourselves with firearms. But the actual act of owning a gun is not simply going to buy a gun. You have to actually decide, I need to train with the gun. I need to make sure. The same thing, we need a culture of privacy that probably, I imagine over time, it'll go back and forth. Maybe at some point, Gen Z will wake up, say we want privacy, and we need the legal ability to be able to do that if you're willing to take on the work, because clearly we have decided as a country, it's an essential part of our culture that we say we want the ability to defend ourselves. And that is we are taking ownership of something. We're not just going to rely on the police. We're going to say we're going to go buy a gun. We're going to train with the gun. We're going to make sure that we have thought through how we're going to use the gun in certain situations. That to me, it's a very strong analogy to privacy. But we need the ability to do that. And so, we want to make sure that we keep that.
This is why I demand, I do believe our rights are extrapolating to a digital realm of some sort. Our First Amendment is your right to access the source code of any tech you're using. Now, that's a wide net. And people have said, well, then that's going to mean all the security protocols in the software are now open and it can be hacked. So you got to be careful. But if you have a drone swarm, you need access to the code to know that it's not coded to destroy you. If you have, because I think another aspect of the Second Amendment digitally is everyone has a right to a personal AGI off-grid that can help control the drone swarms but you need the access to the source code to know that it's not connected to some central server or been coded to destroy you secretly in 3 years. And that's about as far as I've got. I love the drone swarm concept. The concern, of course, is government's going to be like, hey, if Joey B over there, shout out Joe, has a drone swarm and can control it with his thoughts, he can conquer his neighbor who doesn't have a drone swarm, although they have a right to their drone swarm. They don't have one yet. And then they're going to be like, oh, that's a lot of power to give one man. But I mean, the United States
having 10 ARs in your home's a lot of power too. Like the whole point of America is you got to.
Who told you that I have 10 ARs in my house?
I was talking about someone else.
And it's kind of like, you don't have to trust me. I just have a right to do this.
Yeah.
Learn to trust me.
I think we have to have an America where citizens are trusted in that level. That's part of why, I'm personally an immigration restrictionist. I think we have to be able to trust the people we have in this country because, the entire point of America is you have to be able to. We give people. You're allowed to say whatever the hell comes to your mind.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to have a gun. Those are a lot of power that we trust in people, and I think we need to citizenship is not just it's not something passive. You have to actually take it seriously.
All right, we're going to jump to this story here from ABC 7 in Los Angeles. There is a measure to give non-citizens the right to vote in LA city elections, and it's going to go before voters. The Los Angeles City Council took one step closer towards possibly giving non-citizens the right to vote in city elections, agreeing to put the measure on the November 3rd ballot. The measure is part of a package of proposed charter changes that will go before voters this year. In a decisive 10-5 vote, the council on Wednesday approved a approved a proposal introduced by Councilman Hugo Soto Martinez to implement non-citizens or residential voting for city and LA unified district elections. Soto Martinez emphasized individuals with some form of legal status, such as deferred action for childhood arrivals, temporary protected status holders, legal permanent residents would be allowed to vote under such a program. This issue to me is really about fairness and representation, Soto Martinez said. It just does not make sense to me that someone who moves to Los Angeles for a temporary job has more of a voice than a parent who has been here for decades, raising their children through our public schools. I think this is a terrible idea for many reasons. You should not set precedent that people that are not citizens should vote. And furthermore, I think that we need to substantially limit the franchise that we already have. I'm a not universal voter kind of dude. I think that MTV did a great disservice with Rock the Vote in the 90s. I think it was a terrible idea. But I'm interested in hearing your take on it.
Well, I think we should generally, this is a criticism for you, Phil, take it or leave it, it's unsolicited, separate those two things. Because some people, when they hear limit for enfranchisement of what we already have to scale things back, they flip out. But the idea of stopping a foreigner from voting, that's not controversial. Foreign people should not be voting in domestic elections. That's insanity through and through, I think. I mean, it seems like it.
I'm gonna throw something out and trigger Jacob. What's the difference between LA's current voting laws and this?
I was gonna say there literally isn't. So I used to live in LA, and I was just amazed when I went to go vote in 24, and I went there, and I tried to show them my ID because I heard these rumors that they won't look at an ID. So I tried to show them my ID, and they literally averted their eyes and looked away. It was the most insane, unbelievable experience I've ever had, and all they do. Whatever requirements you think exist in Los Angeles, they don't exist. You walk up into the polling station, anywhere they are, they're everywhere. And you go and you say, my name is this, and then you just give them an address, and they print you a ballot. There's no verification. Nothing happens. They literally just print it right then and there. They register you right then and there to whatever address you want. They don't check anything. There's literally no check. Then you go into the machine, you go and hit your buttons, prints it out, and you give it to them. There is no difference. God knows who immigrated in Biden, who walked up the border, he could go straight to LA and just vote. And this has been the case for years. And California is sort of under this whole, the consequences. So back in 1994 was Prop 187. And this is when they tried to restrict public programs from illegal immigrants. This is a big anti-illegal immigrant bill. 60% of California supported this back in 1990s. And then a judge said, no, it's actually unconstitutional. So then the immigration floods, takes over the state. There's other propositions that were really red that got, again, totally usurped by either the governor or the judges. And ever since then, it's just been under occupation, and they've just increasingly flooded the state with non-citizens and just made it easier and easier for them to vote. And now they just don't care.
Well, what do you think about? I didn't pull it up, but I saw a piece that was on Twitter. Someone talking about Hollywood and LA may go the way of Detroit because a lot of people are leaving. The movie industry is no longer. It's not what it used to be in California. You know, how does California, how does Los Angeles actually recover from the negative things that have already happened and continue to happen as businesses are leaving?
So what needs to happen to California, we've actually gone through this as a country. There is plenty of precedent. You know, we fought the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, we said that the system of government that was set up in the southern states was unacceptable. It was not up to the standards that our country was going to have. And we went through a process of reconstruction of southern states to reform their constitutions and to bring them into alignment with a standard that was acceptable to be part of the Union. In my opinion, the state of California is way past the point where their standards for how their state is governed is so it's so bad that it is not acceptable to just say, well, it's California, they're their own state, they can do their own thing. I think California needs, and I'm a native Oregonian. Californians destroyed my state first. They all came up to Oregon. They took all the good jobs because they had fancy degrees from Berkeley. And they ruined my state, and now they're doing the same thing to Washington and Idaho and Utah. But the point being, California's lack of care, or whatever you want to describe in terms of motive, California is conducting itself on the governance sphere in a way that is unacceptable to be part of the federal union, and I think they need to be abolished and reconstruct. Like, the government needs to be reconstructed from the ground up to fit in conformity with federal laws. Because Gavin Newsom likes to say, Californians the next exporter. They give more federal tax dollars than they receive in federal benefits. That, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. California has made access to government programs, to illegal immigrants, and to really they have not enforced any laws on fraud in forever. You can go down the list of governance issues that affect the entire country. California cannot be allowed to continue to govern itself in its current regime. Its laws are completely antithetical to our American way of life and our way of government, and that's my rant.
You mentioned Reconstruction,
yes.
Civil War. I've heard a lot about it. I thought it was they were rebuilding buildings. Now you just pointed out they were actually rebuilding their policy, their government constitutions.
Yeah.
So what happened? They all these states surrendered, and then they're like,
all these states had laws saying that black people were not considered citizens. African Americans were not considered citizens. So they went through and completely rewrote state constitutions after that. And also and they made them come into conformity with federal law. So yeah, I mean, there was a whole sequence of things. And yeah, no, Reconstruction was a political reconstruction.
So short of a war that California loses, how would you see them actually abiding by or giving?
I think that you can do. I think you can do it simply through legislation. I think you can say that no state in America can allow non-citizens to vote in this instance. No state in America can allow non-citizens to be eligible for social programs that receive any dollar of federal money, and all of California's do. So I think you can go through and just simply state, if California wants to receive a single dollar in federal benefits, they need to, enact XYZ reforms. You can absolutely do that. They're not enforcing laws across the board in California that we can just if you're not going to police your streets, if you're not going to clean up, if you're not going to, clean up the homeless problem, you can spend as much money on homelessness as you want. If you're just not going to solve these problems, the federal government's going to create a national standard that every state has to conform to. I mean, this is how like every state in America adopted a 21, drinking age because it was a federal standard to do so. The federal government's been enacting standards that states have to comply to forever. I think we need to do it with California and how they run their government.
Yeah, California's in a uniquely awful position. Its Medicaid program, I think, went bankrupt last year, or now it's like it's near bankruptcy. All sorts of issues with that. Every one of the other big one was when the Palisades fire hit. They have a state-run house insurance program where if there was this whole situation where when the Palisades fire happened, a bunch of the houses in the Palisades were no longer being insured by like State Farm, these large insurance companies, because California is already hostile to these firms. So a bunch of these non-renewals kicked in right in January. Palisades fire happened like the 7th or 9th of January. And then when that happened, all of these houses were supposed to go on, I think it's called the FAIR program. And this was the state-run housing insurance program. The value of the Palisades alone being burnt to nothing was enough to bankrupt the entire state. So the entire state is run so poorly that any sort of catastrophic event can send the entire state into financial turmoil. And this is part of the reason why I think like 2030 is significantly, like 2028 is super important, because we're sort of at this precipice where all these blue states are committing economic suicide. You have companies pulling out of Seattle. You have California, like Hollywood's pulling out. Colorado is probably the first big blue state that's actually hit a legitimate recession within the state, while other states are like red states are like uprising right now. They're all doing great economically. Colorado's in recession. They're losing tons of jobs. People can't even move out of their houses because the housing situation there. All of these states are kind of going under. And as they continue to go under, if we don't have control of 28 and like into 2030 and whatnot, then when these cities go under, which will then bankrupt the states, and the federal government's going to bail them out. And this is a massive, massive concern that people aren't really thinking of yet. These states are huge liabilities to the solvency of America as a whole, and they're killing themselves.
And Ian, how do they bail them out?
Federal tax dollars.
No, they print the money.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were just complaining about it earlier. They just print it out of nothing.
Federal Reserve prints it for them, and then they borrow it at interest.
And then more inflation for the American people. You do make a good point, because this really is going to be something that, it's going to be in conjunction with the Social Security going bankrupt. You're going to have states going bankrupt, and the government is just going to start printing.
And they're choosing to do this. Like, this is a choice of policy. This is the big thing. What's terrifying about California, and even though fine, in California, this law doesn't really matter. In Los Angeles specifically, it doesn't matter because they already like don't care about checking anything.
But that'll be a model for the rest of the country.
Exactly.
Yes.
Every blue state from California up to Seattle, and then Colorado follows, and then Illinois follows, and then New York follows, and then they sort of create this secondary country where their policies then bleed out into all these other states, and the effects of this then bleed out to the rest of the country, which is like the case for this needs to be handled. They cannot choose to kill themselves like this, because if they do, then they're going to take the rest of us with them.
Yeah, this is an argument that we make, or a topic we discuss regularly. The things that are going on in California when it comes to voting, that's what the Democrat Party wants to see nationally. Yep. So if California is allowed to continue to basically rig the system, and we talk about what rig the system means, right? Like, anytime you say to a Democrat, you say, look, they're rigging the system in California, it's bad. And the response is always, well, that's the law. As if the law implies legitimacy, right? If you think, okay, only Americans should vote, and you think, well, they don't let illegals vote, right? That's the thing, is if you're here illegally, you can't vote. And again, you talk to any Democrat and they'll say, illegals can't vote. But then you go through the system that California actually has. There's no IDs. Anyone can go up and say, I live here, give me a ballot. They mail ballots out. There's no chain of custody. There's no guarantee that the person that filled out the ballot was actually a legitimate voter or here legally. All of this stuff is enshrined in law. So it's legal. It's all above board. But it's set up so that way it is not representing the people. It is representing people that are here legally, and it is representing the Democrat Party. That's what they would love to do in the United States. I mean, it's kind of what happened in the 2020 election, right? They mailed out ballots, collected the ballots. No one knows for sure if all the ballots that were counted were legal. But we get Democrats that come in here, or left-leaning people, and they're like, and their common refrain is, was the 2020 election stolen? And the answer is no, because it was legal. And that's what they say. Well, it was all legal and you haven't shown me, you can't prove. And it's like, no, I don't have evidence of massive voter fraud. You're right, I don't have that evidence. But when you mail out ballots and you have no way to verify that the people that were filling out the ballots were actually, legitimate voters, then you can't say that it was legitimate. Yes, it was legal. Yes, Joe Biden was elected legally, but it wasn't legitimate. It was a completely novel way for the United States to carry out an election. And people say, well, COVID. You know what? The proper solution to COVID means that you just have a really low turnout.
Yeah.
Not mail out ballots, not make sure that anybody that's in the country of America gets to have a ballot. You just say, oh, well, this particular election, we have a really low turnout. Because no one complains about the variance in turnouts from election to election under normal circumstances. But when Donald Trump's going against Joe Biden and they want to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get in again, well, then you figure out a way for it to be legal to do unprecedented things.
No, so you're absolutely right. What Democrats do is they're masters at process. I envy their ability to just engineer process to get the outcome to be exactly what they want it to be, which is what they did during COVID. Completely changed election laws in a ton of states around. They made it election season in a bunch of different states that had never had that before. And, so yeah, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's okay. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't change it. And we have got to get to a situation in this country where we look at states like California, not just California, kind of across the board. I mean, I live in Virginia. They're doing this to my state right now. Just because they passed a law doesn't mean that we need to accept this as, how we're going to govern ourselves as a country. We have got to get to the point where we have the confidence to say, no, you're not allowed to have any level of government in America that has a single non-citizen voting for it. It's not okay. You're not allowed to have them vote legally like they're trying to propose, and you're not allowed to let them vote by simply looking the other way. We need to have a system of elections that have standards and that have rules, and that the rules are followed. No one's perfect, doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to have a high degree of confidence, though. And we just have to get to a point where we're just confident enough as a country to say, we're just not going to tolerate that.
My concern here is if we were to, initiate a reconstruction through the federal government into California and be like, you're going to be changing laws, and if you don't, you're going to lose government funding, that they would go, well, we're not. And the Americans have betrayed, the American government has betrayed us. See, everyone, China, help us. And then China comes in and funds all their military. And
then you send in the National Guard. If they say, China help us, which I think that's a little extreme. I think that's a little extreme. But if there were any state that were to appeal to an adversary and say, hey, come help us, that's when you send in the military.
Or if there's no appeal,
and you forcibly remove the people in government.
But if there's no appeal and then the Chinese help, whatever. But I see your point that could lead to military conflict. So I think California's too big personally to govern. I think it should be cut in half, like North and South California.
I'd be fine with that.
The North is very different than the South.
I think there's a big argument for a lot of states. Again, I'm from Oregon. Oregon is completely dominated by Portland, but the rest of the state, there's the I-5 corridor, which is all liberal. It's Portland and Eugene. It's the same thing in California. You have this tiny little geographic area where there are all of the people, and they all happen to be leftists, but then there's the rest of the state, which are massive landmass, and the people who do live there are completely different. Completely different culture. 180, these are small government conservatives in the rest of Oregon. Same thing in California, same thing in a lot of these states. I think that there are people talking about potentially breaking up California into states.
The problem is the North and the South would be the most sensible thing would be to cut it in half. So San Francisco takes the North, Los Angeles takes the South, essentially, the two biggest cities or whatever. But the real differentiation in California is East and West. The West is
That's
all
what
the
I'm
liberal,
more interested in.
Yeah, and they control the seaboard, that's the value of California, is the Pacific. And then all the people in the East are the farmers,
Right,
beyond the mountains. So like, you wouldn't cut it laterally. That wouldn't make any sense.
That's more interesting to me because, like, California. What are the political differences between San Francisco and Los Angeles? It's not really. The political difference and the reason that you would want is everyone kind of east, of the state. Like these are completely different culture. Like, to me, it's more of like cultural compatibility.
But the military value of California is the Pacific Coast access.
Sure.
It's part of why Putin went into Crimea and Ukraine is so they could get Mediterranean access. You take away seaborne access, you're begging for a war.
We can keep San Diego.
So there could be, I don't know. It's a big ask, but California it just seems too big. The north is like the what are they called? The redwood trees. It's a lot of forested area. The south is like mountains and desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, Texas actually has, like, it's funny to talk about breaking up states. The ultimate Republican nuclear weapon is, I think, enshrined somewhere deep in the Texas Constitution. There's this hidden clause that it can break itself up in like 7 or 9 states. And this is the ultimate, like, we're going to take the Senate forever. We're going to break Texas up, and then we will own the federal government, which I don't think will ever happen because Texans love the shape of our state, but that is, like, there are these sort of options, like breaking up some of the bigger Western states into things, but how realistic any of this is like harder to say. I think it's probably more realistic. So, like you said,
I do think, like, kind of getting back to the Reconstruction, like, there's varying degrees of severity of it. So, you can do simple good governance legislation. Again, kind of gets back, the Senate doesn't do anything. And Trump, that's why even today he's tweeting out, like, they must abolish the filibuster. Regardless if you agree with that or not, the point being, this will require legislation, but we have to have standards that these states adhere to. We have got to have, you can't allow the level of, just degeneracy that California has degraded into in how they're governing their state.
Dude, I have mixed feelings. I sort of veer towards the Jeffersonian model of states' rights over the Hamiltonian model of federal authority. But the Civil War sort of was like, you can't let that happen. I mean, if the country were to break in half into another conflict, that China would take over the world. The Russians and the Chinese would dominate the planet economically and they would swoop in and fund half of the revolution. So we can't.
I don't want a civil war, to be very clear. I think we just need to assert that we're not going to accept behavior like, what we're talking about with allowing non-citizens to vote. Like, I think if you were to clean up California's voter rolls, if that were just to be, if you want to receive another $1 more of federal funding, you were to clean up California's voter rolls. If you were to, kind of going back to your point about too many people voting, I'm sympathetic to that argument. I think that vote by mail, like, I think you need to have standards in place that make election counting happen overnight. Like, people need to have results of the election the same night. I think you need to have a system where it's not election
India
season.
has 1.5 billion people, and they know the results of their elections the same day or the next morning.
I mean, every third world country can administer elections, and you know what their voter security is? They make you dip your finger in pink ink so that that doesn't come off for a week, so that you know that person is voted or not. Like, there's low-tech solutions to this stuff. Like, that's literally, like, it is not hard to do. We have to, and my point being, though, going back to California, if you were to clean up the voter rolls, if you were to have election day instead of election season, if you were to make sure, like, all of a sudden Republicans would start winning elections that they haven't won in 20 years.
How do you feel about blockchain voting? Have you looked into it much?
I prefer low tech to high tech when it comes to election security, just because what I've seen all of these. So, like, I love blockchain. I love the technology. There's, like, a lot of really cool stuff going on in Wyoming with blockchain. But when it comes to elections, I think that voters inherently trust low tech over high tech. It's harder to cheat at scale. Like, again, I'm a huge fan of blockchain. I think, though, simple is better.
Yep.
And like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not like against it, but just as like, what can we do right now?
Paper ballots.
Yeah.
I kind of see a hybrid system
Sure.
where you put the paper ballot in the machine and then it goes to a series of like 19 different blockchains where then
Sure.
you can go online and there's a barcode that you can scan, punch in your ID,
Yeah.
your social, and verify that your vote is being read as what you put it in as, because
Not against that.
all paper
Yeah.
ballots, you could write one thing and then they can count it as another.
No, and that's actually been a thing in Detroit for like Detroit, Chicago, the blue cities. Like that's like voter fraud has been a thing in America for a very long time. It's existed for as long as the Democrat Party has. But yeah, I mean, so like I actually think that's interesting and certainly not opposed to it. But low tech is certainly possible and would eliminate a lot of the biggest problems that we have.
Yeah, even if I were interested in some solution like blockchain or high tech, we can't even get voter ID passed. Yeah. So to have something like a complete revamping of the way we do votes, when you can't even get verification via ID.
Yeah,
I think that's. I mean, to get what you're talking about, you need ID first, because you just were mentioning, you punch in. Everybody would have to have a number. And I think that you'd get resistance from both sides. You'd get resistance about having ID from the Democrats, and you'd get resistance from Republicans saying, I don't want to have a serialized number that the government, it would be one of those, digital ID kind of arguments. So whereas I understand what you're saying for security reasons, I think the easiest thing is look, you get one paper ballot. I wouldn't mind if the United States were like, all right, you have to actually put your fingerprint on it, not that they should keep those records, but, dip your finger in ink that doesn't come off for a week. So that way, you can prove you voted, but you can't go back and vote again. And
I think it's like to get to, too many people vote. Like, I think you should have to care enough to show up on the day. Mm-hmm. You should have to care that much.
100%.
And it wasn't that long that was basically the standard, and as few exceptions as possible. But that's at least a minimum threshold to where you have surety that the people are voting, and then you have you have to have a level of buy-in that you're willing to show up on a particular day.
Would you make or be open to making it a national holiday?
I mean, I think you can. I don't think that it's needed, but sure.
Because a lot of people will argue they can't get to the voting polls because they work 12 hours.
A lot of people would lie.
To let you off, to go vote during work. At least in my experience, years ago.
I mean,
a lot of people
have been
would
doing
lie and
it's
say,
never been a federal holiday. Somehow it worked. Like, I don't care. Like, I think that companies should be encouraged, to make it easier for people. But I also if you wanted to trade Juneteenth for election day, sure.
Which is today, isn't it? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Happy Juneteenth, guys.
Banks are closed. Post office is closed.
Happy Juneteenth.
Growing up, that was never a thing. Like I said, I'm 50, and I can't.
Yeah.
This is like the past couple years, the first couple years where it's like, oh, everything's closed. The
I'm
banks are
okay
closed.
with it being a little bit harder.
I had a hard time in LA getting out to vote. Getting out to rock the vote personally, because I had to work till 6:30, and then the voting places would be closed up or closing, and it was super angering. Like I felt like I was being disenfranchised by the way the system was set up.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure there's a case to be made. Like maybe it should be open for the full 24 hours, maybe a national holiday, or like some sort of mandate. Like, hey, you can go out and vote during a work day. Like you can take a few hours off or whatever. But like you were saying, Thune's already saying that that there are Republicans now in the Senate that are so opposed to Trump that they would never vote for SAVE. So we're already running into all these roadblocks of the rhinos in the Senate.
I want their names.
Yeah, they won't approve.
So
they won't vote for an 80% approval rating bill. So
Yeah,
it's just
so the idea of that should be the minimum standard. This isn't something that's some kind of off the wall crazy idea. I mean, you talk to people in places like Canada, And they're like, you don't have to show ID to vote? You kidding me?
So what is missing in the SAVE Act? I haven't read it. Is it worth reading? Like, is there something in there that people are like, no, we can't let that?
It's literally Republicans hate Donald Trump.
So that's the more recent thing. A little while ago, the Senate, they took a vote to see, like, would you vote yes or no? We're voting on the bill, but would you vote yes or no on the bill? And even then, I think they only...
Well, they voted on this last summer.
Yeah.
And 50... Tillis ended up taking his name off, but they had 51 votes for a while. It was last June they voted on this. So, like, the Republicans in the Senate are terrible, and they hate America. They hate Trump. Like, these are just kind of Republican senators are like the worst human beings on the planet.
Is it like a type of omnibus bill? Is
No.
there just a bunch of stuff jammed in there
No.
that's irrelevant?
No,
I got to read it.
it's very sad. Like, it's like 2 pages. It's not long.
I think there was a draft of it that included some other things, but the vast majority
because
of the bill,
Trump wanted a few other things included in
Yeah.
it, but that, to me, that's neither here nor there. Like, it's not, the SAVE Act itself could just get passed by itself. I mean, at this point, Trump's like, I'm not going to sign FISA reauthorization unless there's SAVE as part of it. Like, Trump, to his credit, is really pushing this.
and even then, like, I think one of the more recent criticisms that I saw when a lot of the SAVE debate was happening a few weeks ago, where a bunch of Republicans were even saying, well, voter fraud really isn't that much of a big deal. Like, we don't really need to worry about it. It's a really small amount. This bill is unnecessary.
Shut up.
And it's like, what? So, I mean, you obviously have every Democrat's going to oppose it because for them, like, this is their voters.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of Republicans who, frankly, it's not even just about hating Trump. They also just can't stand their own voter base.
Are we on track to use Dominion voting machines again for the next federal election?
No, we gotta go to Discord.
I guess we'll
question.
find out
So
soon.
Yeah, right.
let's see. What do we got here today?
Hey, we got callers.
No, we're not going to
We
callers.
got questions. So if y'all have questions, drop them in the Discord chat.
here. Let's see. What do we got? Where are they?
They should be appearing soon. I think Olivia just put it on slow mode.
Give it to me.
Oh, Olivia, what are you doing?
Slow down, everyone. I'm having a hard time following.
Here we go.
In regards to companies collecting data, the person clicking accept cannot give approval or everyone else around them in their contacts, and currently this is how it, let's see. In regards to companies collecting data, the person clicking accept cannot give approval for everyone else around them or in their contacts, and currently this is how it is.
I know.
If someone blindly clicks that they accept, the children living in your home, your guests, and your family member who isn't on social media do not give approval. Do you think that this is something that will ever face the courts or be written into law? Unlikely.
Yeah.
Unlikely, because I don't think anything has gone. I think he's kind of referring to like the shadow profiles that Facebook makes. So for if you're not aware, if you have a phone number in your contact list and it's mom, and then one of your friends has the same phone number in their contact list and it's Sherry, then Facebook will say, oh look, this number matches. This person's name is Sherry. Let's make a profile for him. And then if you go somewhere else and say I'm here with Sherry, and they see that it's the person, somehow they see that it matches some information on that Sherry person, and there's a picture, and you check in, they'll put the picture on it. So they'll literally build a profile. And it's not particularly hard when people are sharing all their information. They'll build a profile for a person that doesn't even have a Facebook page, that's never signed up for Facebook ever. And the more information they get, the more comprehensive the profile will be. And I don't imagine that there's going to be any kind of legislation about it. This is Facebook's business model. They've never.
Courts have been so deferential to these companies that I just don't see that being an approach. I like the way you're thinking, though, because that ultimately is probably a type of legalistic approach that we're going to have to take against these guys. But right now, the courts just let these guys run wild. And that's unfortunately the world we're living in right now.
Let's see. Taylor Lorenz's ex-wife says, Ian, you made it rain here in Texas and it's 100 degrees. I'm blaming you. Can you boys riff on the guy in the UK who threw a 3-year-old into a crocodile enclosure?
What?
Story from today. just says man in Coulter's law. Well, yeah, I mean, look, if you have a person in your country that is not supposed to be there, they should be sent home regardless as to whether or not they have thrown a 3-year-old into a crocodile enclosure. If you find a person that throws a 3-year-old into a crocodile enclosure, they should be punished to the fullest extent of the law that the law allows, regardless of whether they are in your country legally or illegally. It's not necessary to carry out the most extreme form of punishment that the government allows to someone that is there illegally, that is thrown the crocodile. Like they get the worst just for throwing the kid into the crocodile enclosure. It doesn't matter if they're there legally or not. And anyone that's there illegally should be sent home.
I mean, yeah, the UK is just, obviously we have our problems here, but man, the Rotherham inquiry, or the
rape report,
inquiry,
yeah.
What is it? Oh,
Rupert Lowe's rape report,
like
212 pages,
and it's
250,000
horrifying.
girls.
It's
yeah.
like, I mean, the accounts and all the people have been trying to like nitpick the numbers and whatnot, but the actual accounts of what's happened to these girls and how it was allowed, encouraged, covered up by police, by the UK officials. I mean,
by care workers, by people that were in the hospitals.
They were paying. Like, one of the most worst cases that I read when I was looking through it was that a girl would be trafficked, she'd become pregnant, she would have the child, and then the traffickers that like raped her would then get paid foster care money by the state to take care of the child as a result of the trafficking.
Unreal. And to your point, like, people are they're trying to discredit it by saying that it wasn't done by the government. They're saying, oh, it couldn't have been 250,000. And I made this, I made this point on the morning show the other day. It doesn't matter if they increase the numbers by 100%. If it was 125,000 girls, it is still
make it 80 or 800,000.
It doesn't matter.
That is completely irrelevant to the fact that they had a systemic nationwide problem, like that every single aspect of government was in on it. They knew it was happening. They allowed it to happen. They encouraged it in many cases to happen. I mean, some of these care facilities, they were using them to pimp out the Muslim men would wait out front for the girls to leave, and they'd pick them up. Like every single, like, I am more mad at the government officials in the UK than I'm even, like, obviously, UK needs to do remigration, but they need to lock up every single person who is involved in any aspect of this.
I mean, I mean, there's so many people that are trying to cover it up, or that have tried to cover it up. The thing that really does kind of get me the most is the care workers, right? The people at hospitals.
Yeah. And the police officers.
Someone asked me, they said something along the lines of, that's going to happen in America. And I brought up, that's not going to happen in America. This is a country where a father went and his daughter was raped, and he went and he took the law into his own hands. He was tried for murder. They found him not guilty. Then he ran for sheriff and won to be the sheriff. This is a country that celebrates Gary Plauché Day. Now, this might be a little too online for some people, but Gary Plauché, his son was molested by his karate teacher, and as the man was being brought through the airport, Gary Plauché took the law into his own hands, and everyone knows the story. And so this kind of stuff, like as much as terrible things can happen in the United States, I don't even think that law enforcement would allow that. Now, here in the U.S., I'm going to
disagree with you. I bet you it's already happening in places like Minneapolis.
You think so?
I bet it already is. A small scale, sure, but I mean, you saw the reaction that Minneapolis had, kind of the crazed women involved in those, ICE riots like earlier this year. I bet it's happening right now.
And
I mean, I know that
most of America, I 100% agree with you. I think that places like Minneapolis, I think certain places in Michigan, I mean, there's cities in Michigan where they do Islamic call to prayer.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised if in cities like that, if it's not already happening.
And even like going away from just like the Muslim thing, it was either in the city of Philadelphia or it was the state of Pennsylvania, I think. This is very recent. I think this was yesterday. The Supreme Court had to formally ask, I think it was the attorney general of the state, or maybe it was like the district attorney for the city, I'm spacing on which one, to not lie to them. Because it turns out that that individual, that official, plus like their secretary, were just straight up lying, trying to get people off of death row for like murder and like all sorts of other heinous crimes. This just happened like yesterday, I think. It was so it's like you're already seeing various amounts of law enforcement try and sweep this under the rug.
So I agree that there are problematic district attorneys.
Pockets, yeah.
Right. Well, no, there are problematic district attorneys, right? But I don't think that for the most part, law enforcement is going to, like the actual guys that are doing, your detectives, your cops that are beat cops and stuff. I completely agree that there are plenty of DAs, there are plenty of leftists that have been, that have had their campaigns that were funded by, leftist organizations or what have you, that have been elected, and you've seen some of those people get recalled, and that's another reason why I think that it wouldn't happen on such a broad scale in the U.S. And I think that's my point. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but
I think you're right.
The whole systemic failure, because I think that individual cops will not allow it. I think that detectives won't just turn a blind eye. I think that there would be a lot of people that would quit. They would be whistleblowers here in the U.S.
I do think in America, like in the United States, I do agree with you. If this was happening on a broad enough scale, there would be a cop. He would go on a podcast, like he would blow the whistle, and you would have higher levels of authority that would absolutely take that serious. So I do agree with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if in Minneapolis, if the foster care workers and stuff like that were already facilitated.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. It's possible that it would happen on a smaller scale. But
in the UK, I think kind of the point of the report was to show that didn't matter how high up you went, no one cared.
Up to Keir Starmer himself, up to the Prime Minister himself. All right, so who is this one? Leonard says, are we watching the greatest marketing scheme ever with Anthropic and their Mythos Fable 5 models? Or do you think they really built something that's truly dangerous? So like I was talking to Tim last night, the unique thing about Fable is when you give, like, the ability to hack is emergent because you give an AI a really, really comprehensive ability to reason, and you give it a really comprehensive ability to code. Those two things together create an ability to hack. It's not like they created it saying, we're going to make this thing able to hack, right? That ability, the ability to hack into computer systems, it takes reasoning and it takes a really deep understanding of code. I don't think that it's a marketing ploy. I think that Fable probably is incredibly good at hacking. I use Sonnet all the time with my AI, right? Like I got an AI bot. Most of you guys know. I call him Tank. And I use Fable, or no, I'm sorry. I use Sonnet because it's not as expensive as the what was the newest one? Anyways, Opus. Yeah, it's not as expensive as Opus, and it's pretty comprehensive. Like it's pretty good. So I do think that it's probably as capable as they say it is. They didn't start Project Glasswing for no reason. I don't think that they would have given it to companies to test out if it was just about marketing. And if it was just about marketing, these companies someone in the companies would have been like, this is not a big deal. There would be people talking about it, and you're not hearing that. So no, I don't think that it's a marketing play. Do you guys have takes on this? I've
got an interesting riff off what you just said, and something I thought was very interesting in the Trump administration's response. So if you look at I think it was Lutnick, I think it was the Commerce Department that put the restrictions on the product. What was really interesting about it is, and part of the reason they had to recall it, was that they placed an export saying no foreigner could get access to this, including foreign nationals within Anthropic. What was really interesting to me about that is that a model to force these companies to hire American? Because like if these AI models are going to be the point where we're not going to allow, is that an opportunity for the Trump administration to force these AI companies that are in many cases have CCP like known, I mean, like, you know, huge percentages of these companies are foreign citizens. Is this a way for the Trump administration to force these companies to hire American? I thought that was just an interesting little aspect of it that I thought got overlooked by a lot of people.
When I'm looking at this, common sense wise, it's like, okay, the dam is breaking. The water looks like it's all going to spill out. And they're like, hold on. Fix that patch in the dam. And I'm like, the dam's still breaking under its own weight. I think, what are they, even if it's all Americans at Anthropic, why wouldn't the guy just Dropbox the code to like a Chinese? How can you stop this at this point?
It was totally available for like 2 days. People made videos about like, yo, use this shit now because it's going to be, it's probably going to be gone. People anticipated this would happen.
My buddy,
so powerful.
My buddy works deep military tech intelligence, and he's like, yo, bro, the people are freaking out about how to counter quantum cryptographic breakage. Things are figuring out at the quantum scale how to break cryptography. So they're trying to how to counter it. It's like, how do you counter a hypersonic tungsten rod that's coming straight down from orbit? So that's the thing about ballistics. So they're kind of hard to counter. You're always kind of on your back foot, and the more explosive forward moving things kind of take precedence. I feel like that's what AI is right now. Jesus, I don't want to get dark pilled on this right now.
All right, well, smash the like button, share the show with all your friends, tell everyone you know that you want them to watch Timcast IRL. You can go to Timcast News, join our timcast.com to join the Discord. There's no after show tonight. You can go to Rumble to join Rumble and watch the after show. There's no after show tonight because it's Friday, obviously. But during the week, you can join the Discord and call in. You'll be able to talk to our guests. You'll be able to ask us questions. But for right now, Noah, where can people find you?
Yeah, so it's Noah Wall at Noah Wall. I run the State Leadership Initiative. That's stateleadership.org.
Yeah, and then just follow the state leadership account, which is Red States Lead at Red States Lead.
Do you have a personal?
Yeah, my personal is Jacob I. Wehmeyer, Wehmeyer.
It is a great conversation, guys. That was awesome. I'm at Ian Crossan. You'll find me at Ian Crossan all over the internet. Carter Banks.
I am at Carter Banks. You can follow me at Carter Banks everywhere and at Carter Banks Official everywhere else. Juneteenth, everyone. Happy Juneteenth. Released a song today. You can go to Alive or Dead song.
Oh, yeah, big day.
Yeah, I'm pumped about it. I think it's going to be a bop. So we'll see.
Awesome.
Anyway, let's go.
All right, and make sure that you check out clips throughout the weekend, and we'll be back here on Monday.